Hi, my name is John Gomez, and I'm the CEO and founder of Sensato. This is going to be somewhat of a new presentation, a departure from some of the things we've done in the past, but I think you're going to find this really helpful and exciting to kind of get your arms around this content. Ultimately, what this is I'm going to do a live reaction and review of a findings and action plan that was recently released by the Office of Civil Rights in regards to Oklahoma State University Center for Health Sciences and some of the findings and what led to those findings. And we're going to go through it together. I think this is going to be really helpful for those of you that are obviously in IT security and compliance, but more so if you're a CIO, if you're a COO, CFO, or CEO at a hospital, if you're a CMO or CNO as well, and even if you're a board member. I think that as we go through this, it's going to be pretty eye-opening because I think that we're going to be able to kind of get a better insight into what the Office of Civil Rights looks to, and for some people that have a kind of a misinterpretation of how HIPAA works. And so with that, I kind of want to jump into it, right? So, the goal here is ultimately to kind of go through this together. I've not really read it in depth, so I'm going to do that with you. And we'll get started in a moment. But there's a couple things I want to touch base on. The first thing is, as a company, we have a thesis to help organizations comply with best practices and regulations, to detect threats, and to respond to incidents in a timely and professional manner. We work very, very hard on that every day. It's what we basically determine our value each and every day to contribute, the ability to help our clients achieve these objectives. Unfortunately, a lot of times we run into people and organizations where they, kind of have, for some reason, misinterpreted how these three things work and how they need to work together. And they come up kind of with their own interpretation of best practices or their own interpretations of regulatory compliance or how you best detect threats or respond to incidents. And I think as we go through this review of Ohio State University, you're going to find that it's actually, pretty clear as to what OCR expects. And if you don't meet those expectations, it ultimately means higher fines, greater penalties, and more importantly, stronger opportunity for a civil lawsuit. And in some cases, even potentially a criminal lawsuit if patient safety is involved. And we haven't seen that happen yet, but I do believe in the future we will see criminal prosecution if patient safety is impacted due to negligence related to cybersecurity. The second thing we try to do with our clients is really help them reduce liability and protect themselves legally, increase their legal defensibility. And so I think this type of forum where we go through the findings of an actual case really help you kind of start thinking about your legal strategy and how that really needs to shape up well before you ever have, and hopefully you never do have, but hopefully you have thought this through and how you shape up that strategy before there's a cyber event. So that's kind of the backdrop, and that's what we do every day, and I think this is going to be kind of an exciting change or evolution, rather, of some of the material that we have provided to you. And there's tons of training that we've given, and if you ever want to get involved or review the training we do, and a lot of it, probably about 90% of all the training we do is free, you could just reach out to us at info@sensato.co. So with that, I'm going to jump into this, and what I want to say is, listen, this is not in any way, shape, or form meant to be a put down of Ohio State University. I think that the reality of life is, in this day and age, there are so many competing things that occur day to day in the healthcare space that ultimately, you can only do so many things each and every day. Unfortunately, there are regulations and best practices that we all have to attain and achieve. Now, there are justifications, very real justifications, which we're not going to get into here, but we have gotten into in some of our other content, and I'm happy to speak to you about them. There are very clear justifications of when you cannot fully embrace best practices and potentially not even be able to meet regulatory requirements. OCR is actually very understanding. And there are other constructs. There are actual regulatory bills, executive orders that have been signed, presidential executive orders to help organizations alleviate fines if they can demonstrate that they are actually doing everything they can to meet best practices and regulatory compliance as it relates to cybersecurity. That said, you have to be very careful that you don't interpret on your own what you think is justification. So again, very happy to talk to people about that and give you more insights to that. But with that, I want to kind of jump into this review, and let's see where it goes and what was brought up by OCR. Okay, so we're basically on the HHS website. This is, you can go out here yourselves and look at this. It's public information. We're not disclosing anything that is not in the public record. And that's actually one of the reasons we thought this would be interesting to do, because it's out there. But again, a lot of us don't have time to go dissect these things. And so you can get a copy of this on your own. And I would suggest that if you can, maybe send it to others in your organization to help them better understand, kind of how we're evolving in terms of liability and fines. Now, as we know, OCR is not going to bring a civil suit against you, but this can very well lay the foundation, right, for a civil suit, whether that's a class action suit or multiple civil suits. And again, my belief is that if there is a patient safety impact, this would as well lay the groundwork for many state attorney general or prosecutors to consider criminal charges for neglect or professional incompetence or failure to meet public trust for executives in a hospital. That's not happened. I want to make that clear. But about 2 years ago, we predicted that there would be class action and civil suits for patient safety, and we've seen that come to fruition. So really, I think this is an important piece, important case to really kind of get an understanding. So what we have here as we go through this, and I'm going to skip around in this. This is somewhat lengthy, but I don't want to take up everybody's time. I want to give you the highlights, and then I'm happy again to talk to people and do a more formal presentation of this if you feel that would help your organization. So the background here is that on January 5th, 2018, there was a report to OCR filed in accordance with HIPAA of a breach of protected health information, and that included 279,865 individuals. I should say that I'm going to just warn you, I really honestly have not read this, so if I make some mistakes here, I apologize. I will try to correct them, but I'm reading this real time just to see what's going on. So in this situation, some unauthorized third party gained access to a web server by uploading malware. So first thing we're going to look at if we're OCR is, were there sufficient controls? Was this an exceptional situation to allow somebody to access this server and gain the ability to upload malware? The fact that this is a web server, well, we'll come back to that. So that web server stored PHI names, Medicaid numbers, healthcare provider name, dates of service, dates of birth, address, and treatment information. So yeah, PHI. It's discovered that an unauthorized user had previously accessed the same server with the first date access occurring on March 9th. At the time of the incident, OCR reported that it was not aware that there was electronic PHI stored. So this is a problem right here. Okay, the fact that the organization did not know there was PHI on this is a common issue, and this is something you really need to think about, is how and where is your PHI, right? Do you know where it is? Can you easily identify where PHI is in your organization? And I will tell you the answer to that 99% of the time is no, you can't, right? But you need to figure that out. This is where you need to be able to think about, well, what's our justification for not knowing, and is it a viable, defensible position? If it's not, it's going to impact your ability to reduce fines, reduce liability, and ultimately, hopefully, avoid civil suits. Okay, so, yep, in accordance with all the regulations, blah, blah, blah. It's not admission of liability by anybody. Agreement is concession, so it's not a concession. Intention of the parties to effect resolution, terms and conditions. So here we go. So HHS has agreed to accept an $875,000 fine as part of this, right? So that's kind of it. There's also a requirement for the organization to put in place a corrective action plan, right? A CAP. Okay, so we have two things that have occurred, right? You got to pay and you got to fix everything that's broken. Now, the reason I want to bring this up is that there's a very good chance here that your cyber liability insurance would not kick in, especially under the new cyber liability insurance rules. Because if HHS OCR finds that you have a lot of items to correct, I am pretty sure that those items that need to be corrected were the things that you attested to when you filed for your cyber liability insurance, and that you said you do. And so now it's being learned through a government agency that you're not doing those things. So you have a problem now. How are you going to go to your insurer and say, well, we should be covered for this? And they're going to say, no, you don't have all these things in place. And there's some broad language in a lot of the insurance policies, such as, the organization adheres to, supports, deploys, implements, and maintains current best practices in line with the current threat landscape, or something like that, right? And that's a catch-all. Basically, it's saying, hey, if you don't have the best practices deployed to support the current threat landscape, you're not covered by the policy. It's a policy exception. So you need to understand that, right? And that's what's happening here. So it's release, agreement by release parties, binding on successors, legal defense, no additional releases, effect of the agreement, execution of the agreement, totally, so we're going to keep going. Okay, so that was kind of the header, right? The top line. So let's look at this corrective action plan, because again, here are the challenges. You've been fined close to $900,000, and now you've got to spend money on going to fix everything. So for those of you that may have colleagues, let's say, that believe worst case we get a fine. How bad could it be? It could be pretty bad, because and this is kind of an interesting twist, because I don't know if I've heard about this happening in prior years, where OCR exercised their authority to not just tell you, we're going to fine you, but as part of that fine, or part of the agreement, is going to be you got to go fix everything. And so there's a couple elements there, right? The fine was probably higher than $900,000. And I think this is a crafty position where, again, you need to think about this from a legal perspective and a negotiative perspective. Is probably what happened here is, let's say the fine was originally $2 million, right? Because 200,000 records is a lot. Surprise, not a multi-million-dollar fine. Smart thinking, I assume, have no clue, that Oklahoma State University, I think I said Ohio earlier, and I apologize for that. It should be Oklahoma. Stated that, hey, we can't afford to fix everything plus pay you. So what can we do here? And maybe what happened, I don't know, is they said, look, let's say it was a $2 million fine, we'll take $800,000, $900,000 in cash, and you can use the rest to go fix what's broken. Now, obviously, if that's the case, there has to be something in here where OCR can come back and, check that these things have actually been done. So pretty important, pretty interesting, really good. Really good. If this is what Oklahoma State did, it's really cool tactic by them that we all can learn from. So thank you if you guys did do that, Oklahoma. And if you didn't, then still good, right? I think it's good on the OCR's part is to also allow some breathing room for organizations to go fix this, right? Because I think the monetary fine is important, and it gets people to take notice because of the dollars. But ultimately what we want to do here is make the organization safer. So having a corrective action plan, really cool. And like I said, I haven't seen that in the past. All right, so whatever. All right, so the effective date of this cap shall be calculated in accordance with paragraph 2.14, whatever. All right. In the event HSS notifies us you have a breach under section, therefore the complaint shall not end until it has been determined the breach has been cured. All right, whatever. Okay, whatever. So here's the things that OSU needs to do, right? Shall conduct a comprehensive enterprise-wide risk analysis of the security threats and vulnerabilities of all electronic PHI. So now you got to go find the PHI. So you might as well just create a enterprise-wide risk analysis of all your systems. Here's something that I see a lot of organizations do. Really bad idea. And actually, I don't like how this is written, but OCR has no way to enforce this beyond how this is written. And that is we create what's called compliance island syndrome. This is something that we as Sensado came up with back in 2015-ish. And compliance island syndrome is where organizations decide that they only have to put security controls in place for where PHI or PII is stored, or if you're doing PCI credit card data. And that's bad. Attackers don't work that way. An attacker doesn't come onto your network and go, hey, I am just going to go after or attack those systems that have PHI. So you create this compliance island, right, where the PHI systems are protected, but everything else is not. And frankly, that's not a good approach. It's a really bad security issue. Now, you may say, well, so what? It gets through OCR. Kind of, sort of, yeah, but now if you have a civil suit, the civil suit is going to look at your organization holistically. So you really need to go perform a security risk assessment here and discover vulnerabilities across the entire environment, not just where PHI is. I get why OCR did this, but not a good thing. I don't think. I get it. I'm not saying not a good thing in terms of they screwed up. They don't have the authority to go beyond that. But it's not how, if I'm OSU, I would not just go check the box. You're opening yourself up to some problems down the road. So go fix it the right way. They need to develop a risk management plan to address and mitigate security threats. And identify vulnerabilities. The risk analysis and risk management plan shall be forwarded to HSS for review and approval within 90 days of the effective date. Got 90 days. Here's something cool in a self-promotion. Our platform, our CAS platform, includes a full risk register, risk management program, policy exception program, maturity modeling is all built into our system. Honestly, we could have OSU up and running on this in a couple of weeks, and they could satisfy all of the needs here. Upon receiving HSS notice required revision, so then they're going to get revisions. They have 30 days to revise the plan. I mean, that's you're under the gun now to get this stuff done, and I can't even imagine how many consulting firms are chomping at these guys' door and taking advantage of this, and I feel bad for that. We're not one of them. We haven't reached out to them. I would love to work with them, truly would love to, but I'm sure they have enough pressure and challenges going on. So I hope they're able to get out from under this and become a model of how you evolve from where you are to where you need to be. So policy and procedures. OHS shall develop, maintain, and revise as necessary its written policy procedures to comply with federal standards that govern the privacy and security of individual identified players. Here we go. One of the things that you need to think about, we see this a lot. People have policies that have tons of gaps in them. They are not reflective of the current threat landscape. This paragraph right here, what I just read you, is all about you have to maintain your policies in a manner that are reflective of the current threat landscape. Now, I don't know if OSU had no policies whatsoever, if they were dated, inappropriate, not reflective of best practices, and not reflective of the current threat landscape. But if they're not, if that's what's happening here, that's a problem. If they had them, chances are, like most organizations, they're not reviewing them. You have to review your policy and procedures at least quarterly, and that's like a 10-minute review. Hey, has anything changed? Has the risk landscape changed? Are our risks such that our policies no longer support the types of risk we're seeing? Is there an issue with the types of threats we're seeing? Those are basically it. It's a quick, and if there is, obviously, the answer to those things is no, they don't meet the current threat landscape. You got to go fix it. Again, it's going to keep turning into like a commercial. I'm sorry about it, but I'm trying to illustrate why we have what we have, right, as Sensato. So our CAS solution, again, provides our customers with 65 different policy and procedure templates that really allow them to maintain the current threat landscape, and as long as, obviously, they're going to adopt them. But you can customize them to what you want. So now you got, within 30 days of HSS approval, the risk analysis risk management plan, section, So they got basically 90 days plus the 30 to get all their policy and procedures up and running. That's a lot, right? They probably should call us, because our CAS stuff and our policy and procedure templates, they could have all this knocked down in like 30 days, everything, risk management and all of it. And they have to maintain and revise. Well, there we go, maintain and revise. That means keep it up with the current threat landscape, right? Within 30 days of approval, risk analysis, plan, okay. Distribution and updating of policies. Distribute the policies to all members of the workforce within 30 days of approval, and such policies to new members within 15 days. This is a really important thing, and I don't see this a lot. And we do catch a lot of our clients when we're doing risk assessments. We come in just to do a risk assessment on somebody, a HIPAA or NIST, 853 SCSF is. We do talk to the end users. We're like, do you have a copy of the latest cyber privacy and security policies? No. Are you aware of it? Now, it's not just giving them a copy, and this is something really important here. You don't just give them a copy, you have to educate them on it, right? At least at a level in which the policy is relevant to them for their job role is explained. And that's going to be different. I know a lot of organizations go out there and they put people through this yearly HIPAA training and like, yep, we checked the box. No, you did not. You have to have ongoing security awareness training. You have to assure that the person performing a specific job function is educated at the level they need for the appropriate policy and procedures for that job. So that means somebody who's a network administrator is going to have a different type of education in regards to the type of security controls that they need to have in place versus, say, a nurse or a nutritionist, right? You need to know that. That's really a serious call out here. And here you go, right? There has to be you need to maintain a record of who's seen it, that they read, and here's the big one, understand. And this is a big one. Have you gotten a copy of the policy periods? Yes. Did you read them? Oh, well, kind of. Can you please explain to me what they say? You know how many times we ask that question and people just can't, they don't understand them. It's just a checkbox. And you now are facing close to a $900,000 fine. Assess, update, and revise as necessary the procedures at least annually. Okay, so they're saying at least annually. That's cool. We recommend quarterly because it's a 10-minute process. And for those of you that are like, well, OCR says annually, we're doing annually. Yeah, that works really well until two things happen. You get a civil suit, and that attorney brings in somebody like me to be an expert witness, and I explain why, annually is the minimum bar, and for an organization that is looking to assure patient safety, but they would be doing it quarterly, right? There's always me. I'm like always the fly in the ointment that you have to be worried about, right? So you do annually if that's all you can do, but quarterly, it's 10 minutes, folks, 10, 15 minutes. It's not a crazy amount of time. And here you go. So you can't have access to any system that has PHI. But how do you know what systems have PHI, right? So you have to basically train the entire workforce that has access to any computing system. All right. You have to have sanctions. This here, reportable events, is basically in the basis of sanctions. What I mean by that is a lot of times organizations, if you violate a security or privacy policy, there's nothing really that happens to you. Now, let me clear that up. You know what happens? If you're a doctor, nothing happens to you. I said it. You guys can't say it, but everybody knows it. If you're a doctor, man, you could do whatever you want. You don't even have to have passwords. I've seen situations where physicians don't have to have passwords because they get annoyed. Hey, look, bottom line here is, if you're a physician and you are not producing $2 to $3 million in clean, revenue to that hospital so that if something happens, they can pay for these fines, you just follow the rules. You got to follow them, right? And you got to have, as the hospital, real sanctions that are, top boardroom to basement. If board members, I've seen situations, actually I know of a hospital, multi-system hospital, where board members didn't have to have multi-factor authentication simply because it was too hard to access the hospital systems. I'm like, are you kidding me? And here's what they were accessing: the meeting minutes for the board. And they stored them on a share drive within the hospital, and the board members complained that they had to use multi-factor to access the board minutes. That's just wacky. And I say this stuff because I'm on your side, guys, and I know you can't say that to a board member. But I can, and I have. I've come in and said to board members in a polite way, in a nice way, like, you guys you're smoking crack, right? Like, what do you think is going to happen if there's a discovery? Here, you got to demonstrate the actions taken. You got to remember, everything in here is ultimately part of what a civil suit is the fact that, and I'm sure there's other disclosures of agreements out. This is the only one I've really looked at. But I can guarantee you that civil suits are going to look at this, and they're going to start asking, show me your log of actions taken against employees for violation of your privacy and security policies, right? For no reportable event, you still got to tell HHS, right? And that's part of this agreement. Training. Shall provide HHS with training materials so the private interest upon receiving notice within. So you got, ongoing security training, right? Security awareness training. And now these guys are in a position where they got to show this stuff to HHS. So that's, again, one more thing that has to get done, and one more thing they have to pay for. All right. So now they have to have an outside auditor monitor the program, retain records. Okay, so that's all that. Review reports, monitor removal and termination, validation. Annual reports to HHS, and annual reports, and then document retention, requests for extensions and breach business, position, and blah, blah, blah. So, overall, there's probably a bunch of other stuff they could have done. And I don't know where OSU is in terms of their monitoring program and security defenses. And there's nothing in here that talks to patch management or having to maintain, rectify security issues related to the malware getting on the system and discovery of the malware. So, we don't know what the overall agreement is and, what other steps OSU may want to take, because of what has occurred. The thing I think to learn from in this is ultimately that, even if you have all of the monitoring tools in place and you can point to, we got antivirus, we got intrusion detection, we've got, fourth generation firewall, we've got this, that, and the other thing, and your policy and procedures aren't there, if your employees aren't educated, if you're not doing security awareness training, if your risk management program isn't in place and being maintained, and you're not looking at what is the current threat landscape, you still can end up with a several $100,000 fine, a correction active plan, and a bunch of other challenges. So let's talk a little bit more about that. I'm going to switch back to my slide deck, and we'll pick it up from there. Okay, so as I was saying, a lot to kind of hopefully digest here. I hope the goal in me doing this for you is really to kind of look at what are the kind of things that OCR is looking for. Now, this is one individual case, and I'm going to see if there's other cases out there, and maybe I'll do this on a monthly basis or so, is throw together a review and a reaction video to cases. The way that this came up for us, just so you guys know how we work internally, is we have a pretty robust threat intelligence program, which, again, is part of our CAS solution. And as part of our threat analysis reviews, a gentleman named Dan here that works with us, one of our team members, he brought this up, and he flagged it as, hey, this is something we need to be thinking about. And then we started thinking about, well, how can we use this to help others, right? So ultimately, hopefully you took away some things from it, and this helps you kind of, fight the good fight kind of thing, right? I get that probably everyone listening to this gets this information and has made this kind of case to others multiple times, and you meet with some kind of resistance or some type of justification or rationalization. So hopefully you have this now to be able to illustrate, like, look, we have to have really great policy and procedures. We have to have ongoing training. We have to have the ability to sanction people. We have to have a risk management program. We got to track policy exceptions. We got to think about the current threat landscape. We've got to look for and understand vulnerabilities. We've got to scan our machines. We've got to know where PHI is located. And it goes on and on, right? So hopefully it's helpful. Before we conclude, we as an organization, I think we have some great services. I hope you would agree if you were obviously one of our clients. And if you haven't worked with us, we do a variety of different things, from conducting risk assessments. We have a really unique way of doing HIPAA assessments. It includes cybersecurity maturity modeling. That's a very, very popular program, and it really helps to do boardroom to basement alignment. It's not a typical HIPAA program where you're just throwing a bunch of findings and the agents, the consultants tell you they'll see you next year. It's really about how do we create alignment, prioritize things, and develop a roadmap with appropriate justifications to buy you time to get to a corrective state or involve your maturity. We have a virtual CISO program. We've got programs that are right-sized for critical access in rural hospitals versus community versus much larger systems. We've got an amazing medical device security program. We do pen testing. We do incident response training. And we have some pretty amazing tabletop simulation program. So if any of that is something you think you could benefit from, we would love to talk to you. And you can get a hold of us at info@sensato.co. I mentioned this throughout the presentation. CAS is a multi-tiered system. It's kind of like a security in a box. We have our own software platform known as Nightingale. which includes, like I mentioned, a bunch of compliance tools like risk management, policy exception, a vulnerability scanner, honeypots, network deep packet inspection, host intrusion detection, incident response tools, forensics tools. It's a fully integrated platform. On top of that, we have 24/7 monitoring by our Cybersecurity Tactical Operations Center. It's eyes on glass, 24/7. It's a lot more than just a SOC. We have specific procedures and policies in place to help protect patients. And then on top of that, we have the widgets, which are all the policy templates and end user education that I had mentioned. And that kind of came out in that report that you need to have. And we put all that together into one program, really tried to be very, very conscious of the economics and respectful of the challenges that hospitals have. So if this is something you'd like to talk about, we'd love to talk to you about that as well. I'm not going to, this is everything I just mentioned, kind of in a single slide. So you can always pause this and read through it if you wish, but I'm not going to harp on it at this point. So with that, I do hope this is something new. Did it off the cuff, literally in my office, grabbed my laptop, decided to jump and put this together, and would love to hear if you think this is helpful. You can reach out to me directly. My email address is on the screen. And otherwise you can, feel free to call, check out our website. And, before we go, I want to reiterate one more time, hopefully this information, the hope here is that we can learn, by the challenges that others face. Oklahoma State is facing a challenge here, and so hopefully their challenges can become great lessons for the rest of us. And, if we can, all of us, I don't mean this just Sensado, if there's any way any of us can help Oklahoma State, hopefully we can have that happen, right? It's not easy to go through these things. I'm sure the folks there are doing, the best they can to address the needs of the corrective action plan and go beyond that. But with that, again, hopefully this was helpful. Look forward to your comments. Stay safe, and talk to you soon.